Let's go back to South Africa. The Constitutional Court has ruled that both the South African Social Security Agency and the private company it contracted to deliver the grants are under a constitutional obligation to continue paying social grants from the 1st of April until another entity is able to do so. Now, that's a very big relief to around 1/3 of the country's population. Roughly 17 million South Africans rely on these grants, but the continued payment has been in doubt. Here's CGTN's Yolisa and Njamela with more.
It is declared that the South African Social Security Agency, SASSA, and Cash Paymaster Services Pty Limited, CPS, are under a constitutional obligation to ensure payment of social grants to grant beneficiaries from 1 April 2017 until an entity other than CPS is able to do so.
And with that, the country's highest court moved to defuse a crisis over social grants. All this emanated from a contract issue. The government contract with the company that delivers the grants is due to expire on 31 March, and the state agency was supposed to take over. But that agency is just not ready, so the government wanted to rehire the private company. But the Constitutional Court had declared the original contract invalid, and the government failed to find a replacement. Now, the court has ruled the invalid contract be extended for another 12 months until the government agency can take over. While some have criticized the fact that, in effect, the court has given an extension to an invalid contract, for others, the court has simply chosen to prioritize the welfare of 17 million South Africans, the most vulnerable people, who include single mothers and pensioners. Pensioners such as 73-year-old Linankala. Her dependents include another elder in the family and 3 of her grandchildren. Had the Constitutional Court not intervened, Nkala and millions of other South Africans would suffer.
It would be very difficult for us if they were not going to pay. Everyone here depends on me. So I hope government will really pay.
It's actually victory for the whole country. It's victory for the beneficiaries that would have been very much disadvantaged. And we are very happy that what we've always been saying has actually been vindicated.
Government agency has admitted its shortcomings.
Yeah, I am embarrassed. And it's not supposed to have happened, but it has happened, and that is water under the bridge. What is good right now is that the court has ruled that 1st of April we must pay the beneficiaries, and we're paying the beneficiaries. We'll be paying them. My guys, as I'm talking to you, they're in the office starting to pull the trigger.
The court will closely monitor CPS and SASSA. Yolisa and Njamela, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Let's dig deep into the details of this particular story. Obviously, it does carry quite a lot of import, as you just picked up from that package by Yolisa and Njamela. Angela Kupler joins us now live from Johannesburg with more data on this. Angela, given the Constitutional Court describing the handling of this entire crisis all the way back from 2012 as grossly incompetent, especially with regard to how the Social Welfare Minister handled it, will Mr. Zuma allow the Social Welfare Minister to keep her job?
Well, yesterday in the National Assembly, Zuma actually said that he would wait until April. Otherwise, it would be, as he put it, a funny democracy, implying that Minister Dlamini hadn't done enough or done anything wrong unless the millions of grant recipients weren't paid by then. He made no mention then of following up on what the Constitutional Court might say or adhering to any of their recommendations. On the other hand, of course, it's been suggested that he could well use the minister as a trigger to initiate a cabinet reshuffle. But as we heard, this happened on countless times before. It's unlikely that we'll have any kind of clarity because we saw this happen with our friend Minister of Finance and the rumors that were swelling around him at the time. So it's a question of whether the president is going to act true to form or not.
Indeed,
Rama?
and of course we've been hearing quite a bit about those rumors for reshuffle. But let's dig into the fine print of this particular ruling, because Net1 basically has been allowed to keep this contract in place for another 12 months. But are there mandatory requirements, aside from making the payments, obviously, that they have to comply with in that period?
Well, there's a requirement that reports have to be submitted every 3 months about the progress made in finding that replacement. A team of experts will be monitoring the actions and the reports to see how these develop. The SASA CEO said this morning that 12 months will be enough time for them to find a replacement, which is rather interesting in itself, as no replacement was found when the Constitutional Court ruled that the contract was illegal in the first place. It's likely, though, that the Post Office management will be sharpening their pencils and checking to see if their systems can handle the kind of volumes we're talking about. But it does raise the question why the Post Office wasn't approached in the first place. Raman?
Indeed. One last question for you, Angelo. Alan Gray, an investment fund, it owns about 16% of Net1, which of course owns Cash Paymaster Services, and they've called a shareholders meeting, and it seems that at that meeting they might actually call for a wholesale replacement of Net1's board. Alan Gray clearly not happy about how Net1 has handled this entire thing, but do they have the support of other institutional shareholders to clean house?
Well, it isn't that Alan Gray is grandstanding here. In fact, it's understood that the company has been talking to management at CPS and Net1 for quite some time now. But it does turn out this evening we heard that Alan Gray may hold as much as 30% of CPS or Net1 via an offshore holding in Orbis, which is their offshore asset management company. The shareholder has been engaging on an operational level to try and find out what the issues are, to see if they could actually resolve and understand what the management at Net1 or CPS are actually doing. That's if the CIO, Mr. Lapping, is to be believed. He's got involved hands-on and are planning to try and call that AGM if nothing happens. But by this morning it appears that the Alan Gray company had backed off slightly after the Constitutional Court ruling. So it looks like they've given CPS and Net1 a bit of leeway to try and see if they can resolve the issue. So at the moment, Alan Gray are probably reserving their rights. Raman?
Indeed, we'll leave it there for the time being. Thank you for the updates. That's Angela Kuppel, of course, live in Johannesburg, South Africa. One of the, frankly, interesting statements coming through on this particular story. Barely 24 hours ago, South Africa's president saying there was absolutely no crisis.